Hey everybody, welcome back. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, Happy Decade, Happy New Decade, Edward.
And 2020 vision.
A 2020 hindsight.
Whoa.
Woo! So the cannabis industry is over. This is the year, this is the decade of Regulation A+. It's the end of public markets. It's now going to be all private capital. This is big changes.
And now, edibles.
Edibles. Have you tried any edibles?
Edibles.
Just a little
I guess
edible.
if your name was Can, it would be Cannibals.
Cannibal Rex.
Hannibal Lecter.
So
lots of changes, lots of action in the Middle East.
Lots of action in the Middle East. Yeah, what is it? Shriners running that show over there? The Americans attack them, so they shoot down a Ukrainian plane. It's like, whoa. You guys, I know that Ukraine has been in the U.S. news, but they're not actually affiliated with America. You shot down the wrong plane. And you got a bunch of Canadians, for which there is going to be some comeuppance, I can guarantee you. Do you think?
Yeah. Well,
do you think we're just going to let that one fly?
I don't know. You
you killed 67 of our nationals.
100 of the 170 have dual. Some have dual, but they're Iranian.
Iranian Canadian.
Iranian Canadian.
It's raining Canadians.
Yeah. Oh, and you know what else came out today? There's some memos.
Yes, memos.
Memos from some of the Boeing employees saying things like the design of the 737 MAX.
Yes.
A bunch of clowns were involved.
Yes.
And then monkeys were
same guys who are running the military in Iran and the government in the United States. Well, what's going on here? How come I can't find our live channel anywhere?
Yeah.
I'm trying to communicate with the people here.
With the people?
I'm trying to communicate with the people, man.
Are your papers in order?
It says there's no show on. What's going on? Are we doing a show?
Go to MidasLetter.com.
MidasLetter.com.
You know,
do I know what?
S&P continues to defy. It's push its.
States. Yeah. What's going on here? What?
What are you? Is it on?
Yes.
We're on. Okay.
Apparently
it's good to know. I don't want to waste my
Is this thing on?
I don't want to waste my brilliant thoughts on.
Brilliant thoughts.
Just you.
Exactly. What a waste of time that would be.
Okay.
All right. So what do we got here? We got the S&P has resumed its artificially inseminated trajectory to the upside, subsidized by the profligate zero interest rate policy and capital fabrication.
Interest rates are low, and you know that oil is now lower than before, the day before they took out that Iranian general. So energy seems to be in a bountiful. Natural gas is half the price it was a year ago.
Is that because there's more than we need being produced?
Or is it because more and more? And just to talk about the electrification of the world, Tesla, which everyone thought was so overvalued at 200. It's now $460 a share.
480 last I looked.
480, and it doubled in the last 3 months.
You know what?
Doubled in the last 3 months.
Tesla, so Tesla's starting to look like more one of the FANG stocks now. So if we add if we were to sort of eliminate Netflix from the FANG stocks, add Tesla, and maybe, what's a big U.S. company that has...
What would the name be? You looking for a monogram here?
Yeah, I need an R.
So
what company has...
What are you going with here?
Well, I was going to say, at the FANG stocks, we drop Netflix, put in Tesla, and find a company whose symbol begins with an R, then they would be the fart stocks.
What a very smelly proposition.
It's still, see, nothing changes here. Just because it's Christmas
the
doesn't
fart
mean we don't
stocks.
become
The fart
less
stocks.
infantile.
So put it.
The fart
Oh,
stocks.
and the comment was made that as of yesterday or the day before, the capitalization of Tesla was a sort of almost 90 billion, I believe, and that is the most that any company's ever, auto company has ever achieved since Ford. Ford hit 80 billion in 1999. I
told
believe.
you Elon was a good promoter. There's no denying he's a good
And
promoter.
I mean, and that thing was so heavily shorted. Do you think the shorts got? They got it up to
Got it up the poop chute. Yeah.
Wow.
No lubrication there.
Yeah.
That's horrible.
No lubrication.
None whatsoever.
Well, you don't need oil in
So, interesting developments in the cannabis space also. Speaking of symbols that might need to be changed, Supreme Cannabis. John Fowler, the founding CEO, was unceremoniously moved aside, and then last week we find out that Nav Dhaliwal has been similarly treated. They're going to have to change the symbol of that company from fire to fired. Oh, sorry. A little bit.
Yeah, you know what? I need a new phone.
A little bit too excitable over here.
But guess what?
What?
I carry my own napkins.
Oh, do you? Is that in case you have an accident in your diaper?
Yep.
That's a good thing. Anyways, coming up on the show today, we're going to take the temperature from among our favorite analysts. Alan Brockstein from 420Investor is going to weigh in. Charting man Dan McDermott is going to give us his outlook for the first part of 2020. Then at some point later in the show, Francisco Ortiz von Bismarck is going to be here from Terrace Global. Now, this is a cannabis company put together by a bunch of cannabis guys from previous cannabis deals doing another cannabis thing. So, yeah, interesting.
Practicing for my bar job later after the show.
And Cam Batley is not going to be on the show.
Cam's gone, isn't he?
He's self-exiled himself to Australia.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well,
which I thought was interesting. He always did say he wanted to go to Australia.
Well, he's down under.
He's down under now. He's out. Anyways, and as a result, Aurora Stock is continuously deteriorating in value.
Hey, what is it? 220? Did you say
220 is last I looked.
We can look at a chart.
We could pull up a chart. Now, hey, do you know?
Hey.
You know how to do that?
I used to.
Yeah.
Last year. I did last year.
Last decade. That was last decade.
Yeah. We're going now. We used to have 100 years ago. This was the beginning of the Roaring 20s.
Right.
100 years later, we're going to have to hope we don't call it the Boring 20s.
Oh, I think it's going to be anything but boring.
Look at this. Aurora in the U.S. is trading at $1.70.
$1.73.9. I got.
Okay.
Oh no, sorry, that's the market cap.
No, it's 165 to 166 U.S.
Can you believe that? It's got 1.73 billion shares out.
So that still caps it at $3 billion.
1.8 billion in U.S. dollars.
What?
Yeah.
How many shares did you say?
1.74 billion.
Okay, so 1.7 times 1.6 has got to be more than what you just said.
$1.66 US is the price right now.
So $1.66 times 1 billion would be a 1.6 billion market cap. And you're saying there's how many?
1.74 billion.
So there's at least 2 billion market cap. Has to be.
Yeah, must be.
Okay, doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
It's still a big number.
Down 21 cents on the day. I mean, there's a run on this stock. That's what's happening right now.
Man, I tell you,
this would be if there was ever a time for Nelson Peltz to pipe up about some ideas. Nelson, now's the time.
Yeah, but
what do you got planned for Aurora?
Do you think Nelson is cashing in on his options?
I
don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think Nelson's like, Aurora, what? Did somebody sign my name to that? That wasn't me.
So if he comes into a deal like that and he gets all this options, how many other deals is he getting into that don't pay off?
Well, I imagine all the other ones he doesn't talk about.
There
give me the option. If the option starts to be worth something, I'll start talking about it.
Yeah.
If it goes the other way, What was your company name again? I don't think I voluntarily bought that stock. Anyways, so Aurora on the ropes. Supreme Pharmaceuticals looking for a leader. Supreme Pharmaceuticals. That's so 2017. Supreme Cannabis Company. My apologies, John. Nope. Rav. Nope. Anyways, there are. What? we've got a new CEO starting at Canopy Growth
Right.
in a couple of weeks, who is a Constellation guy. He was the executive vice president of marketing, I believe.
Constellation.
Yeah, from Constellation.
Brands?
So you got the guy from Corona is basically coming to run the weed division, making it very clear that, as far as we can tell, this is one of the great conundrums I've been watching the evolution of Canopy with. It's like, if Canopy is got all these medical things going on, and they bring in this company that has no medical things, is strictly recreational, does that mean that Canopy is going to start to maybe shed assets in the medical regime and focus on developing the company as a recreational brand? Or are they going to look at the whole cannabis in space and say, you know what, this is a commodity. Let's just put this thing up on the market for sale and move on.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't. Weed, getting high and drinking beer, those don't go together. Oh, no, those are perfect. What are you talking about? Can you imagine? The United States is a lot less restrictive on recreational substances than Canada is, but even less so than the US is Mexico. So, I think they should experiment with, buy a 6-pack of beer and get 3 doobies with a lighter. And they should sell them across the street from high schools.
Yeah, you could have the
You could have smoke dope campaign. That would be hilarious. Corona, my Corona.
Two gentlemen from Verona, or one dude from Corona. One dude and a Corona.
All right, you know what, Ed? It's time to pay homage
to
our loyal audience.
Okay.
Because there's people here. There's people watching.
You know what they must
Matt
do?
Barone, hello. Buzz Aldrin, how you doing? Modern Picasso, one of the original guys. Zippity Doodah. Holy shit, look at you guys. Happy Merry Christmas. Feliz Navidad. Happy Hanukkah. What else? What else we got?
Happy anniversary.
What?
Happy anniversary. It's a new year.
Happy what? An anniversary. Happy decade, yeah. Well, there we go.
Yeah, interesting.
So...
Yeah, I guess the
Trent
really...
Balzer says, can we talk about particular stocks? AGFAF and CHOOF. CHOOF, I believe, is CHOOM. What's AGFAF? Anyways, but no, I published an article a couple of days that I included the chart from
Agriflora.
Agriflora. Yeah, Adastra Labs. Can we talk about Adastra Labs? Don't know anything about Adastra Labs. CSE listed since Monday. Well, good time to go public if they're in the cannabis space. Mind you, what better time to go public than when the market's at a bottom? But here's the question, Edward. Is this market at a bottom? Or is this merely, if Aurora goes to Davy Jones' locker, then that is going to have a accelerating effect on the downward momentum. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. And I think you got to look at the market cap as a whole of all the cannabis stocks and say, okay, when the whole market cap gets to a number that basically equates to the revenue base, then we'll probably get some stasis. Hey, how about that? Well, that's a pretty good idea. Yeah, and so if a big one went to zero,
yes,
then that means the other ones can hold their value if they're generating some cash flow, et cetera, et cetera. But the day of airy-fairy is gone.
The day of airy-fairy is gone for now, but
it can come back.
Don't forget.
It can come back.
This correction, the 2019, we'll call it the Great Correction of 2019, where we'll say the industry shed, 70% of its value? That happened in 2017 as well.
It did?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then it came roaring back. It didn't lose 70%, but it lost 50%. Anyway,
Wow.
And what happens as soon as the rush comes back, let's say, Donald Trump says, by executive order, I hereby declare cannabis legal federally. What do you think that would do to the entire industry?
Yeah.
I think it would be off to the races. Mind you, there's no reason for him to perform quite such a desperate move yet. Mind you, Donald, it would get people's attention off your impeachment for a couple of days, so maybe you should consider it. Actually, Donald, you could win the election if you legalize cannabis by executive order. Don't tell anybody I told you.
Why do they name, like you got peaches, you got the fruit peach in impeachment, You got the fruit pear in impairment.
Well, that's a very interesting observation.
Yeah, I wonder.
She's saying that they're all a bunch of fruitcakes?
What else would they have? Like an apple mint?
In apple mint? That would be
cherry mint?
Grapifying? Grapified. That means
Speaking of grapify, whatever happened to our buddy boy, the commentator for the hockey? They don't hear from him anymore.
Don Cherry?
Yeah.
He's done cherries. I know. It's a fruity opportunity. Don Cherry is.
Well, that's why they call him Grapes. That's
didn't
his
somebody
nickname.
else offer him a job? I thought he got another job somewhere.
Yeah, I think he's doing.
Never really been a hockey watcher, so I don't know. I used to play it, but used to play it outside on a frozen pond under the moonlight. That was my idea of good hockey, good time. That was my idea of hockey night in Canada. And yes, I know I'm speaking sacrilege to all you hockey fans out there, but hey, what can I say? I'm just telling you how it is. So people are really being quite critical of Aurora now.
Isn't that funny? They loved it way up here, and down here they hate it.
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
And I'm ambivalent because I never participated.
You never participated in Aurora at all?
For trade maybe, like I'm trying to buy a real sell-off.
Yeah.
But these things are, I'd say the way the stocks are performing, it's a bit of a moribund.
Moribund, I like that word.
Yeah.
I spoke to an analyst in the United States of some renown. He's going to tell us what he thinks. Alan Brockstein joins me now, CEO and publisher of 420Invest. Alan, welcome back.
Hey, good to see you. Happy New Year, right?
Happy New Year and Happy New Decade to you as well. Alan, let's start with an overview of the outlook for the cannabis market globally in 2020.
Yeah, so I think the bad news for this year is it's going to be more back-end loaded. Last year we got off to a great start, if you recall, and I think this year is very different. The capital crunch is really the constraint this year, but we're going to work through that, I think, as the year plays out. And let's start north of the border. I'm a little less excited there, but obviously Ontario will be opening stores as the year rolls out, plus some other improvements in provinces. Maybe we'll get lucky and the vape pen bans will be lifted or amended. And then, of course, Cannabis 2.0 will be rolling out even without a robust vape pen market. And, the edibles are interesting. And I'm not that excited about Cannabis 2.0 from the outset. 10 milligrams per package is kind of a bummer. But south of the border, I'm super excited. And I think a couple of things are really interesting about this year. So first of all, as the year plays out, some of the largest MSOs are going to have monster type numbers. And not only will the revenues dwarf their Canadian counterparts, but the profitability, it's already there and it's going to show up even more. So that's one piece of it. But I think, we already saw some excitement around this Illinois legalization. And I think the traders don't necessarily understand the implications, but we're already seeing it play out. Ever since the new year, when Illinois legalized, it was the first state to legalize through the legislative process. We've seen a few things. First of all, 2 ballot initiatives. One is for adult use in South Dakota. Well, South Dakota is like a suburb of Ontario, basically. I mean, of Toronto, so it's not a big deal, but still it would be another state if it were to pass. And then Mississippi, a deep South state, will have a ballot initiative on medical cannabis. So that's exciting. But actually what's really exciting, and this is what I kind of anticipated, James, is New York is back at it. And the governor there, Andrew Cuomo, is talking about resurrecting his efforts to legalize through the legislative process. So I think Illinois is in particular, strong driver because there's so much public company exposure there. And I think it's going to also encourage some nearby states as well as East Coast states to legalize.
Sure. My understanding is that the initiative to get recreational cannabis on the ballot for 2020 in Florida is having some difficulties. Is that going to put a damper on the performance that we've been seeing out of Florida from the Florida-based companies?
Yeah, I don't know. Florida is really tough to handicap. There's a lot of litigation going on, and the caps are going to raise. So I don't really have a confident outlook there on the legal. And I know a lot of people are talking up ballot initiative or maybe even legislative process there, as well as Arizona. And these would be good things. I'm not counting on them, honestly, but I hope it works out. Florida would be incredible, but I'm not counting on it.
Right. When we look at companies like Aurora, who are continuing to diminish in value and sort of exhibit the actions of a drowning sort of man, so to speak, trying to lighten up on assets, abruptly announcing the cessation of construction at its projects in Moose Jaw. I mean, to what extent is Aurora going to be able to service its debt going forward, and to what extent do you think it's really facing existential challenges?
Yeah, I think first of all, it's important to understand this is not just Aurora. It's really across the sector, and it's in the United States as well for some companies. And in the U.S., fortunately, we are seeing some efforts that are being made to improve balance sheets or to give better access to capital. And we've seen a lot of real estate sale-leaseback transactions. And so in Canada, like I said, Aurora is not alone. And I think it's really easy to look at a financial snapshot and just assume the worst. And I think that's what the market's doing. A lot of these analysts, I do understand, and I read the the Piper Bank of America did the same thing. I read them both, and so people are taking down their revenues for next year. Aurora has a big chunk of debt due in 21, and just like if somebody came to you, and I don't know if you have a mortgage on your house, but if they said, "Hey, dude, you got to pay your mortgage back right this minute," well, that might be a problem. So if they give you a year, you can work out. So I think Aurora's. It's not what they want to do, it's what they need to do, obviously, and they've already started that process of cutting back on operating expenses, cutting back on CapEx, divesting assets. Remember, they sold T-God, and they have some other assets. They've had this haphazard M&A strategy. They have a big chunk of Alcanna shares. I would hate to see them sell that for their sake. I think they're really cheap, but there are some ways that they can access capital, and the reality is, if the environment improves, they have more than a year to work out their next debt. So.
Sure. But I'm curious, looking at the whole marketplace for 2020, I agree with you completely that the United States is representative of opportunity, and I think the Canadian market is more representative of risk, just because of the overcapacity in Canada and the slow manifestation of sales that have drastically underperformed expectations. But I think, I don't see anything to get excited about in Canada.
Well, like I said, it's going to be as the year plays out. It's not tomorrow. Cannabis 2.0 will be slow to roll out. You can go to the stores, you can see the high prices and the limited selection right now online. That will get better. If some of these, especially Alberta, were to lift their vape ban, I think that would help a lot. Vapes were going to be the most popular 2.0 product, and it's ridiculous. I understand being conservative, but this is not the right way to handle it. Even in the United States, Massachusetts, which was the only state to implement a vape ban, they ended theirs early because it's all right to be abundantly cautious at first, but you need to revisit your decision. They revisited it. They ended that vape ban early. It's not the right thing. The black market didn't ban vapes. Why is the illicit market going to ban vapes when that's not really the issue? So the issues are better understood, and don't underestimate distribution. In Ontario, that bottleneck there, the lack of distribution there has been detrimental. So as the year plays out, it's going to get better, James. I think you're right, obviously, about potential oversupply, but that's in a market that's facing severe underdemand, and that's really the issue. The demand is there, but there's no way for it to get channeled into the right spots right now.
Sure, you bet. Alan, to what extent do you think the likelihood that cannabis becomes a federal election issue is going to manifest and impact the whole sector in the U.S. anyways?
I put about a 0% chance on that, but I'm trying to be conservative. So I think what will be interesting, most interesting, looking out 10, 11 months from now when the elections hit, is all the state initiatives that we'll see. And that traditionally, excites investors potentially, and obviously it's good for the industry. And one of the big differences is nowadays, the publicly traded companies are actually in some of these states. And you mentioned Florida. If they were to be on the ballot for a legal initiative, that would be huge for a whole bunch of public companies. New York, if they were to legalize, and that won't be through the ballot, it would be legislatively, it would be huge. I think 7 out of the 10 license holders there are public. But in terms of like any sort of federal policy changes as a result of the election, this would only happen, and not even necessarily, if we were to get Democratic control of the House and the Senate. And so even if that were to happen, and I know investors would most likely react very favorably to that prospect, this is a very long, arduous process with lots of challenges. And look at how long it's taken Canada to roll out its federal legalization. So I don't think that it's actually going to happen, and if it does, you got a long time to get ready for it, in my opinion.
All right, Alan, we'll leave it there for now. We'll come back to you next week. Thanks very much for joining us, as usual.
All right, take care, James.
The Bullet ID system etches ammunition in sequence from either pre-existing supplies or in line on manufacturing lines of new bullets operating at high speed. It can etch any caliber of bullet, ordnance, or metallic asset at the processing speed of existing manufacturing systems. The footprint of one etching module is as small as 4 feet by 8 feet, and it is easily integrated into manufacturing assembly lines. A new user, in this case an ammunition manufacturer, signs up to the online system and establishes their identity in the database. In this example, demonstrating the process for etching existing ammunition, packaged ammo is dumped into the hopper from where it is then arrayed on the feed conveyor. The system automatically matches the barcode to the sequence registered by the user and etches the barcode onto the casing of the round in a split second. Once etched, the now serialized ammunition is retrayed and placed in the automated packing process. From this point, the serialized ammunition is distributed throughout the retail, military, or civilian channels, with each exchange and delivery recorded into the system via scanners and registered in the cloud-based tracking system. At any point during the life of the round, the shell casing can confirm exactly the chain of custody and timeline of the ammunition with 100% certainty just by scanning any shell casing from the lot with a smartphone. No kidding. Anyway, we're back, and so Alan's sounding pretty bullish on the U.S. side.
Yeah.
A little bit bearish, more bearish for Canadians, but also, quite bullish. We're taking a look now at the Midas Letter Indices here, which you probably haven't seen for a while. And there's the tail. I mean, the angle of decline has softened in most cases. And in fact, in the CSE, which is very representative of the US MSOs, it has even turned upward. In fact, today it's up almost 10 points, up almost 1%. So I think it was Alan who said, or was it Bruce who said, that there's going to be a great bifurcation this year between Canadian and US stocks, where the US stocks are going to perform well and the Canadian stocks are not going to perform so well. And there's varying degrees of, pessimism about the Canadian market. But I certainly think that it's looking better for American companies than Canadian ones going into 2020, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's a much bigger market.
I would even go as far as to say that that U.S. MSOs are a buy here. I mean, I'm looking at the index generally. Looking at this CSE index here, we'll go to this.
I think Canopy's having a particularly good day today.
Is it? Well, so Canopy's the one Canadian one that is not at risk of running out of money or running in default of covenants on debt. So they basically, they got $2.6 billion in cash on the balance sheet.
Yeah.
And short-term investments, and they've got Constellation. It's like, well, if you ever needed to run for the hills, you just hand it over to them. But yeah, so there's the index in close-up mode, but you can see that just towards the end of November there were a few good days in here, but they don't translate onto that screen for some reason. And then down here at the end of December, it was looking good, and this is starting to look very much has the signs of a sustained reversal in that it's got higher lows and higher highs, which my good friend Dan McDermott has taught me suggests that the trend is changing.
It needs to get over to 27 to 28, 29 level, and then it really looks, I think, constructive. But right now it's sort of in that range of 24 and change to 28, and it's been doing that now for month or two. But let's not listen to us. Let's listen to a technician who knows the game very well. Here's our friend from Asheville, North Carolina. Dan McDermott is back from thechartguys.com. Dan, Happy New Year, Happy New Decade.
Thanks, James. Same to you. Glad to be back.
You bet. Dan, what are you seeing in the markets these days?
We've got some wild volatility thanks to the Middle Eastern crisis with Iran, and it has come out that the bulls are just fine. So we are continuing to monitor the daily uptrend, which has remained intact through it all, and that's keeping us in blue sky breakout with big tech leaders like Apple and Google leading the way forward. We've got cryptocurrency, Bitcoin's giving us a monthly higher low and looking at a little bit of upside, and we've got the MJ sector slightly shifting momentum. We see what is needed for the bulls to change the weekly trend on CGC and APHA. ACB, Aurora, keeps getting crushed and is one of the major bear leaders in the space, but a nice shakeup of things. Gold, too. Gold went wild. So some very interesting volatility out there to start the year.
Yeah. To what extent do you think that volatility is solely the result of the geopolitical incident that characterized the end of last year and the beginning of this one involving Iran?
Oh, I'd say it's the vast majority of the reason. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the 5-minute time frames and seeing the news release come out, and I'm watching the S&P 500 dump. I'm watching oil shoot up, gold shoot up. Even Bitcoin started correlating with the news. It started acting similar to gold, and that's the first time. There was one other time in my 2.5 years of watching Bitcoin where I've noticed it correlated to broader economic factors, and this past week has been the second time I've ever noticed it.
So you trade Bitcoin frequently?
When the opportunity is there. I traded it all the time in 2017, often in 2018, less in 2019, and I've started this year with a few trades already.
And so what is your outlook for Bitcoin in 2019 or 2020 rather? I'm already living in the past from a technical perspective at this point.
So we're looking for a long-term monthly equilibrium, which is what you get equilibriums after significant volatility. So looking specifically, I'll show it in a chart in just a second, but from the move from 3,000 to 14,000, then we went down to 6,400, and now we're going to look to go back up towards 10,000, and I expect to see a monthly tightening range take place for the good first half of the year, and I expect that when that equilibrium breaks, we're going to have great volatility and a great longer-term signal sometime in the second half of 2020.
Okay, so you approach Bitcoin not so much as a crypto enthusiast, but as just a technical trader because it's active and volatile and liquid.
Yep, otherwise I would be emotionally attached, and I would have definitely given back tons of my cryptocurrency profit.
Right. I guess that's the secret for successful technical trading, is it? Remain emotionally detached.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. Okay, so let's talk about the action a little bit in CGC. I mean, it's been up, it's been down, it's sort of looking a little bit better now. The incoming CEO hasn't really asserted any sort of message or direction for the company yet. The outgoing CEO didn't really, make any significant changes to the direction of the company in 2019. From a technical perspective, what are you liking about CGC's prospects for 2020 versus its more of its risks for a trader?
Well, right now we're on the verge of a weekly trend change, and I need to see a break of 22.25 and 22.8, I think it is. I'll have to double check that chart. But if we break those levels, that's the first weekly trend change that we've seen since we started pulling back the last 7 months, and since we've been in a downtrend ever since. So that is the first start of a shift in sector sentiment that we will be looking for. And right now we are literally just hovering under that level. And it's looking like the APHA earnings of FRIA, which are first thing next week, I believe Tuesday pre-market, may dictate short-term direction and dictate whether that resistance level. We'll have to see how correlated CGC is to the earnings reaction, but I expect a fairly significant correlation.
Are there any other large cannabis names that you are keeping an eye on?
Honestly, it's the weakest ones. So Aurora and Hexo and these names that are just in free fall, we know that to a certain degree, the sector is only as strong as its weakest names. That doesn't mean names can't go up while others are going down, but it just means if we're going to change the sector sentiment, if we're going to go from a bear market and utter despair for the last 7 months and shift to hope and some green, we have to see our weakest names find a bottom and start to shift as well. The biggest green days that we see in the MJ sector are when everybody across the board goes green. So if these names are continuing to fall with zero support and they're continuing to get downgraded by, like Aurora did just yesterday, it's going to continue to be a bit of a dark cloud overhanging the sector. So while I have no interest in playing those names bullish, I do know that I will need them to go bullish if my plays that I am looking forward to be bullish on, which is Canopy and Aurora and Afria, I need to see the entire sector start to shift its momentum and find bottoms.
I guess to some extent, the next reporting quarters of the likes of Canopy and Afria are going to inform the direction of the entire sector. If they report earnings that surprise to the upside, obviously the reversal to the upside could be expected to strengthen, but if they again disappoint or warn for future earnings, then it could actually have an accelerating factor on the downward trend. Do you have any sort of expectation of that in the next earnings cycle of these companies?
Not really. I have been poking around with Afria because it has responded bullish the last 2 times to its earnings, but doing a very brief superficial fundamental analysis and having some help with some other people pointing things out, their previous quarters appear a bit inflated because they were showing some gains on some investment, and we're anticipating this coming quarter that those are now going to be inhibiting the profit, the underlying returns. So that may be a little bit of a shock to the market who's looking for these numbers to continue, but maybe now. It really goes back to what we talked about with Trulieve and how you were pointing out that they were doing some things with their numbers that maybe were not going to be there the next coming quarter. And that's something we're watching for. Honestly, it's still just technical levels for me where I have to see these weekly trends change, because if we do not get these weekly trends changing, we know that these bulls are just going to continue to be at the mercy of the bears.
Yeah, you bet. All right, Dan, walk us through some of this explanation in chart form.
So here's some of the longer term charts we're looking at. Starting off with Bitcoin, we're looking at the low of the prolonged pullback down in the $3,000 range. Our top just under 14,000, and we've been scouting for this monthly higher low to form after about 6-7 months of pullback. It looks like that monthly higher low has formed now at 64.30, and we're going to be looking for the bulls to set a monthly lower high. The bulls want to make their way up towards the 10,000 level or beyond to give themselves adequate space within this equilibrium. Ideally, I would say the bulls want to make their way, pretty much just break that 10,000 level. We'll look for a lower high, and then we would look for a higher low into the middle of the year. That being said, we do still need more bull follow through at this point. Last case that the bulls want to see, worst case scenario, would be just a very weak bounce and then a drop to a lower low under 64.30. So need to keep the uptrend intact at this point, the daily uptrend. Just looking for a higher low right now, so no real red flags there. But if we were to lose the daily uptrend from here, again, cautious because this monthly chart needs more follow through. So onto the MJ sector, weekly timeframes. So this is what we're looking at from our low, top of the bounce, higher low, and now we must break 22.25, and then right behind it is 22.48. These two resistance levels breaking would again be the first time that we've seen a weekly trend change since we started pulling back hard from 52.74. You can see every little bounce attempt was just a lower high. So it would be notable, but again, the burden of proof is on the bulls right now. Show us something, change this trend. If they don't, the weekly lower high pattern continues and the bears keep their control. The other name that is similar to this setup is APHA on its weekly chart with our low, high, higher low, and the bulls need to break 561. So APHA at this point needs about a 18% move to break resistance, whereas CGC only needs about, less than that, maybe 6-7% or so. So closer for CGC bulls. And if you pull up other names, obviously ACB is nowhere near breaking resistance, and Cron, not as clear a setup on its weekly time frame. Cron's really just been trading sideways the last couple of months and did not see as significant a bounce to create the potential trend change scenario like those other names have. So that's what's most important for me here in Q1 2020, and knowing that Afria's earnings are so close, just a few days away, I know that that may have a significant impact as to whether or not these resistance levels are able to break or not.
All right, Dan, thanks very much for your contribution as usual. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, James. See you next time.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the little notifications bell. If you're interested in getting monthly actionable investment ideas in the cannabis space to your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter at MidasLetter.com. Just taking a look here at the Canadian Venture Index. It's interesting to me that the highest performing stock is, there's one called Medco Canna Organics. I believe we've had them on the show, up 4 cents, which makes them a 40% gainer today. But the next one is Lift & Co., which is at 8 cents, up a penny, which gives them a 15% win on the day.
Flying.
But way down here, like if we were to order this by what the price is, you've got so many stocks down here below 5 cents. Calaterra, Gaia Grow, East West Biosciences, Relivium, Nutrisci, Hemp and Food. Oh, no, that's one says not. So they're gone. Sugarbud, 6 cents. Lift & Co., 8 cents. Pure Global Cannabis, 8 cents. Naturally Splendid, 8 cents. Invictus, 11 cents. Experion, 12 cents. Like
Invictus is 11 cents.
Yeah.
How about Juju? How's it doing?
Juju? What's that? Is that a candy?
Oh, how the mighty have fallen.
I don't know what you're talking about. Juju? Are you offering me a Juju, or would you like a Juju?
Are you offering me your head to be a baseball?
Are you telling me that you've got some special Juju? Let that Juju, man.
Drop
I don't know what you're talking about.
Did somebody just tell me to drop a
load?
A load? No.
Okay, let's look at the CSE Index here, because it's just way more fun to look at, and we might stumble across a symbol called Juju on there. But okay, so this is the index page for the CSE Index. We're going to array these companies by highest performers. Mojave Jane, look at that, 33% uptick, and it gained a penny. So it's now trading at 2 cents.
It gained half a penny.
I guess it gained half a penny. Yeah,
half a penny on half a penny.
It's just
and a half.
our system is not shut up to show half penny gains.
We round it up or round it down. Yeah.
Half penny is not what we consider
half penny.
significant. So Nass Valley Gateway, 13 cents. Believe is at 3 cents. Platinex, 3 cents. Veritas Farm. Okay, let's reorder these by price. And looking here, you can see that the leaders to the upside, and this is the interesting thing, you look at the CSE Index, and if you didn't have all of these hind tit sucking losers involved, then the performance...
I never heard it put that way before.
that's my special form of
sucking
derision for what the cannabis companies have performed like on the CSE for the most part. Now, this index would actually be performing much better if we started to break out just the CSE companies that are U.S. operators. So Trulieve up 6 cents on the day, 13.23. That really hasn't recovered that well from its taking down by the short dumpers. Green Thumb Industries 12.49 up 9 cents. Air Strategies 12.28 up 18 cents. They were in our office once looking for something to do, but they never followed.
I think yesterday I saw the Green Organic Dutchman.
Yes.
I think they've two of their top executives have fled.
Been downgraded.
Fled. Have moved on to greener pastures.
Have suffered the slings and arrows of misfortune.
Yeah.
But yeah, Crisco Labs, they closed their deal with Origin House, and what happened? Meh.
Nothing.
$7.50.
No, the bloom is off the rose, and
Ooh, good one.
When we were, let's go back maybe 6 months ago, and things started to slide, and I remember I said, listen, if you're losing sleep, pare down, not hair down, pare down.
Yeah, but wouldn't you have lost your sleep after you locked in the lost and sold? You'd be tossing and turning and think, well,
you know what, I think, but my experience is, when you have a position on, that's a lot more anxiety-ridden than when you sell it and you know, okay, you can't lose anymore. But as long as the position's on,
yes,
then you're susceptible to the vagaries of the market.
Right.
Could you write that one down? No. Why would you?
No.
Okay.
Well, I can subscribe to your newsletter.
Yeah.
Anyways, so I want to thank the audience who's joined us. Really appreciate your patronage. We'll try to be as relevant as possible going forward. But in that vein, here is a CEO of Terrace Global, Francisco Ortiz von Bismarck. My next guest is Terrace Global CEO Francisco Ortiz von Bismarck. Francisco, how are you today?
I'm doing very well, James. Thank you for having me.
Great. Francisco, what is the business of Terrace Global?
So Terrace Global came together in late 2018 when several successful cannabis entrepreneurs came together to form this Canadian company with an eye on international opportunities. We are focused on the development and acquisition of international cannabis assets. As of today, we are in Uruguay, Spain, and Portugal. And our founders myself, we have Michael Gallego, he was a founder of ICC Labs, which was sold to Aurora. Stephen Arby, which was one of the founders of MedRelief, that was sold to Aurora as well. And then the Goldman family, Jonathan Goldman, who were founders of Bedrock Can, that was sold to Canopy.
Ah, very cool. And so you guys are focused on Cannabis Genetics then?
Well, we're focused on on markets, and I think this is a key point, on existing domestic market, markets that are approved for exportation and has low-cost inputs, low-cost jurisdictions. We actually focus on what I said before was the development and acquisition of cannabis assets internationally. So in Uruguay, Portugal, and Spain. And yes, we're also focusing on genetics as well.
Okay, fantastic. And so then, what's the revenue model? How are you going to make money?
Great question. I think that's a very important question for everyone right now in this sector.
You bet.
Well, the first thing that we're focusing, and I think it's important to understand that in the regions that we're in Europe and South America, we are what Canada was 5 years ago. So right now, we want to focus on domestic markets that there are sales. For example, in Uruguay, we have a recreational license that actually produces recreational cannabis, and that's being sold in the local pharmacies in Uruguay. So that, for you to understand, we produce 2 tons of recreational cannabis, and that's being sold through the pharmacies in Uruguay. For you to understand the market, the current size of demand for Uruguay, even though it's a small country, is actually, according to the government, 40 tons. And between the 2 licenses, one that belongs to Aurora and ours, we actually only producing 4 tons per year right now.
Okay.
So the revenue model there is, selling dry flower in Uruguay, and then we're doing where we have a provisional medical license in Portugal, And next year in 2020, we're going to build our greenhouse facility. Once that's built out, the production capacity will be 10 tons. To give you a better idea of how much revenues that could mean, that's about 3 euros per gram. So that's potentially 30 million euros.
Wow, fantastic. And how reasonable is it to expect in the future that you will be able to export cannabis products out of Uruguay to the other Mercosur and Latin American countries? Is that going to be a pretty fluid border, or is it going to be a little tougher than that?
For the recreational cannabis, that's not happening. The government, the law states that the recreational cannabis is only for the domestic market. On the medical side, that's a different story. It's starting to happen. We're seeing some exports from Uruguay to Europe and to other South American countries. What we see there, the export route, while Uruguay on not the recreational but on the medical, that will happen. Right now, we're focusing on Uruguay more on CBD extracts that I think is very interesting to eventually export to countries like Brazil, which in the past 2 weeks have changed the law where you can actually export CBD products to Brazil, but there's no production in Brazil, and that's 200 million people. Mm-hmm. And then what's in Portugal, the medical cannabis, that's actually being in the European Union, and with a total population of, I believe, about 700 million in Europe, then we'll be able to export from Portugal to other European countries. And the Portugal facility, that will be built up to GMP, so we'll make sure that we have a pharma-grade product.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so obviously being in Portugal gives you a doorway into the whole European Union and Europe more broadly. How soon do you see that market becoming a contributor to your revenue?
I think the earliest we'll see that is end of 2020. We believe in the first 9 months we'll have our greenhouse built, and then we'll start some production, and we estimate about 1 ton of production end of 2020, and that will be sold domestically and export. First, I think that 1 ton will be sold domestically through local pharmacies, and then in 2021, the facility will be a full capacity producing the 10 tons that I mentioned earlier. So I think we'll see domestic revenues from Portugal in the end of 2020, and then from exports in 2021.
Mm-hmm. Do you have an idea as to how much you're going to be able to retail cannabis for in Portugal?
Yes, I mean we'll be selling it at the wholesale for about between 3 and 4 euros per gram. Retail actually is closer to 10.
And do you have Do you have a handle on your costs in terms of producing in Portugal?
Yeah, we better.
Yeah.
So yes, the cost of producing medical cannabis is below 1 euro per gram.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So is it mostly outdoor in Portugal, or is it greenhouse, indoor?
No, it'll be in greenhouse.
Oh, it'll be in greenhouse. Okay. So it seems like there's a lot of companies trying to.
Cannabis.
Oh, I see. It seems like there's a lot of companies trying to get something going in Portugal. Is it difficult to get set up there? Is the government giving away licenses like free tickets, or is it more of a you have to know somebody to get your stuff organized there?
So to give you a better idea, you need to know people. The Infarmed, the regulatory body of Portugal, there's one full license operating in Portugal, which is Tilray, and there are a couple, another 5, which have provisional license to build the greenhouse. What the Infarmed has told us is that they want to see what happens with these licenses, and I think they're actually becoming more difficult to issue new provisional licenses, and they want to see how the market evolves. But basically, the short answer is that with these 6 licenses in 2021 and in 2020, they don't foresee issuing many more licenses for the short term.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so you're based in Montevideo, Uruguay, correct?
Correct, yes.
And what is the advantage to an internationally focused cannabis company to being based in Montevideo, Uruguay more broadly?
Well, what we have is, we do have an office in Toronto since we're a Canadian company, okay. But what we have is operational teams in Uruguay, in Portugal, and in Spain. And I'm based in Uruguay, obviously, because I think it's the country outside North America. I mean, as you know, it was the first country to legalize recreational cannabis in the world, and it has a very good legislation and a very supportive government. for this sector. And I think being very well positioned close to Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil, it has a tremendous opportunity, no?
Sure. And tell me about Spain. Spain is the country that you really don't hear that much about, even though I know that there's some conferences on cannabis happening there next year. How close is Spain to becoming a retail market recreationally or a medical market?
So there are 5 or 6, I believe, medical licenses in Spain, where those companies are producing and they're exporting. There's not a local medical market, and there has been some talks about potentially recreationally, but I think that's still far away. What Spain offers, I think, it has one of the best growing climates for outdoors. So it's very cheap to grow hemp in Spain. So our focus right now is we're focusing on growing hemp outdoors, and then one of our milestones for 2020 is actually to build our extraction facility in Portugal to be able to do extraction under GMP. So I think the growing climate and the low cost of production in Spain favors that, and Spain and Portugal, they're neighbors.
Right. Okay, so then in terms of your capital requirements, getting to the point of profitability, how is that looking for you right now?
I think we're actually one of the very few companies that successfully closed funding in the past months. We closed our RTO. We raised a total of 17 million Canadian, which is enough. I mean, we're fully funded to finance our capex and take us to profitability. So I think we're very excited about the opportunity. We're a very young startup, but I think our founders, our Canadian founders, they were brilliant in the sense that they pioneered the industry in Canada. They exited the Canadian industry last year, which I think was the perfect timing. And then they stood that there was a big opportunity internationally. So there, I think that together, and now with a fully funded startup, there are also great M&A opportunities that we've allocated some funds towards it. And I think there's a liquidity constraint in the market in North America, but even more so in Europe and South America.
If you like the show, you'll love our website. Visit us at www.midasletter.com for interviews with key CEOs, cannabis news, and to subscribe to our newsletter. Bruce Campbell joins me now. He's a portfolio manager from StoneCastle Investment Management for the StoneCastle Weekly Cannabis Update. Bruce, how are you?
Doing well, yeah. Into 2020.
Great. Well, I'm starting with the same line of questioning for everybody. What's your outlook for the cannabis space in 2020?
Yeah, hopefully it performs better than it did last year. I think it will. You know, what we see is you'll probably see a bifurcation this year. You'll see really the companies that are starting to execute and prove that they know what they're doing versus the ones that probably shouldn't have been public in the first place. You're probably going to see a big differentiation between those. We think that, we actually think that Canadian companies probably will perform better than most people are expecting. And why we think that is because we think that as these retail sales channels open up, that you'll start to see some numbers come through. And then on the U.S. side, we think that there's tremendous opportunity there. Obviously, we're still watching closely to see what type of legislation changes there could be. But even beyond that, even if there's not, the companies that are there that seem to be executing well are doing well, and we think that investors will probably return back to the space.
Sure. Do you see the uptick in sales in Canada driven by 2.0 products or other factors as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a function of both. So, I think just more retail, and we obviously continue to see these retail locations built out, maybe not as fast as we'd like to see in Ontario, but as we continue to see retail built out, then there's going to be more product that gets in the hands of consumers. And then obviously with the 2.0, that's a whole new product category that right now doesn't exist, and obviously, well, it does in the black market, but it doesn't in the regulated market. But that's where we've always talked about there being a crossover between new patrons into the cannabis sector, where they haven't tried a product before, but they will hopefully try or potentially try something in the 2.0 market that crosses them over, and they become a returning customer.
Yeah. What about in the United States? There's another sort of raft of states that are moving incrementally closer to legalization. Illinois just went legal. Florida is trying to get the recreational thing going, having a bit of a struggle there. But where do you see the big opportunities in the U.S. in 2020?
Well, I mean, I continue to think that the Florida market is actually pretty interesting. Both from a medical standpoint, they continue to have the medical numbers that, kind of just blow the numbers right out of the water. But there's also this, make it legal campaign that's going on right now where they're basically petitioning, trying to get enough signatures to get it on some type of ballot. And that would be fairly significant because we think that could be a pretty big rec market as well. California probably starts to get, a little bit more right-sized this year. I don't think it happens completely this year, but, it'll be much like the Canadian market where there's such a big black market and they have to transition that over to the legal market. You saw so many issues last year with supply. Now that supply probably catches up to a certain degree and you'll start to see more of a push into the regulated market versus the black market. So that's an opportunity. And then, obviously with the numbers that have come out of Illinois so far, what you're seeing there is, or what they think they're seeing there is, a real sort of adoption of the product from some of the consumers that are outside of Illinois but are neighboring states. And so that's going to be an opportunity that we'll have to watch and see, sort of what happens and if those sales still get driven by people coming into Illinois to buy. And then the third area, or I guess the fourth area that we think is interesting is that, sort of New York tri-state area where, the governor there has put out a proposal this week or suggested that they put out a proposal where, they work together to create some sort of legalized zone for recreational marijuana. And it's not just New York, it would be, the neighboring New Jersey, Pennsylvania as well, which would, and Connecticut, which would also, really produce a fairly significant region of consumers. There's probably 25 or 30 million people in that area that would immediately be new consumers to the market.
Right. The situation in California continues to be characterized by excess in terms of players in the space, and the demand doesn't seem to be matching the expectation that was forecast in 2019. Do you see that improving at all?
Yeah, I think it'll happen. We know the market's there, right? Obviously the black market is massive. It's just a function of converting that black market to a legal market, and that's comes through a few different avenues. One is by reducing the ease at which the black market is there, and that obviously comes through law enforcement. And then obviously pricing is the second. And as we've seen, a lot of these facilities that were built in, sort of 2018, 2019 took a little bit longer to come up. And so to begin with, there was a shortage of legal flower in California, and now that's starting to get filled in. And probably by the second half of 2020, there should be kind of enough for what everyone on the legal side wants. And then as that continues to grow and the legal side takes business from the black market, then that production comes in line. So we think that there could be an opportunity there, especially for companies that have sort of lower cost production or have a brand. Like if they have a well-known established brand, then that's also going to help them.
About a wave of insolvencies in the cannabis space, which hasn't really materialized, though some companies look a little bit more fragile than others. Do you have any sort of ideas on that?
Yeah, certainly there could be a few this year. I mean, there was a few last year that kind of got announced at the end of the year. You're probably going to see a number more this year. Right now, I think a few of these companies are still holding on to lifelines where they think that they might have short-term financing that's in place. That's becoming more difficult to get. It's more expensive, higher prices, or extremely dilutive for shareholders. And in some cases, I don't even think that that's going to work. It doesn't matter kind of how dilutive they want to be. I don't think people are going to come in. And so there's going to be a wave of insolvency. There's probably going to be a huge amount of write down as well. If you take a look at some of the the companies and some of the acquisitions that they've made, they really paid up for those, and now the auditors are taking a look and saying, well, how sustainable is the cash flow from that purchase you made? Should we be writing down the goodwill that's sitting on your balance sheet? And at the same time, you're probably also going to see facilities get shut down or shut in. I mean, that's what we saw last year in sort of the October, November, December timeframe. I suspect you'll see more of that because, as we sort of have projected, we still think that there's going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about 3.5 million kilograms in Canada that could potentially hit the market if everything was built out. And we know that the Canadian market itself, probably at full maturity, is only going to allow for demand of about 1.5 million. So there's kind of 2 million kilograms per year that either is going to get shut in or sold somewhere else. And right now that market doesn't really exist. I mean, there's a trickle that's going into Germany, but that's pretty much kind of it right now.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a great update as per usual there, Bruce. We'll leave it there for now and come back to you next week. Thanks very much for joining us.
All right, thanks a lot. Have a good weekend.
Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Make sure you never miss a show by subscribing to our YouTube channel and clicking on the little notifications bell. If you're interested in getting monthly actionable investment ideas in the cannabis space to your inbox, subscribe to the newsletter at MidasLetter.com.
I'm not.
Oh, hey!
Oh, hey, ho!
Hilarious. Elle, I hope you enjoyed our show, first show of the year. We are going to do a show every Friday going forward at 3:00 p.m. on Friday afternoons from up here, high in the Exchange Tower of the center of the Canadian financial universe.
Pity.
Next week, we're going to be back with, I wrote an article, you might have read it, about how you can't get any properly cured marijuana in the Canadian licensed cannabis universe. I promptly heard from some people claiming that they had examples of it. I ordered that which I could online. Next week, we're going to sample some licensed cannabis products in Canada that claim to be properly cured cannabis. There's only one way to test that. That's to smoke it. That's what we're going to do. We're also going to be back with, let's see, Charles Turk is going to be joining us from the 9 Point Alternative Life Sciences Fund. David Kadekel next week from Ulticore. Oh my gosh, you should just tune in now. Hey, don't forget to turn on your subscription. That means you have to click the bell and then click it and make sure it's on. That's people have been saying, hey, I don't get the notifications. That's because YouTube is doing their best to destroy our audience because we're not American. That's really the way that works. And so, yeah, there you have it. There's our show. We'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.